Welcome to another Sinespace tutorial. In this tutorial, I will show you how to make basic furniture and prepare it for upload or use in your room or region. Furniture is any item you place onto your room floor, walls, or ceilings. It can be chairs, rugs, quests, lamps, even trees, flowers, fences, and water items can be furniture. It can even be houses itself. There are 3 ways to prepare furniture for use in your room. One is to upload it with the room itself. This free space that you get when you join Sinespace comes complete with a house, trees, a fence, a patio, and other items, including the water. Another way to upload is the edit room system. These are furniture items that appear, and you can drag them out, place them where you want, and rotate them so that they will be exactly where you want them. These items stay with the room, and they don't move with you from place to place unless you have editing rights in another room. And here we're going to just demonstrate some things you may already have done. This is the table that we're going to make today. And here we're placing our quest item, which is a basket of eggs, on the table. In this way, the next time you arrive in the room, it will look exactly like this. You click the Save button and then close your editing tools. The third way is to spawn an item. We spawn items not from the editing room system, but from our inventory. A spawnable item will spawn in front of us on the floor. When you click spawn, you'll see there you have a spawn and there you do not. So if it says spawn, then you can just click it and it appears wherever there are spawn rights. Not everyone gives you spawn rights in their regions, however, so you'll need to find out. So here we have our items. We have a nice comfortable patio set up. So let's get started making our furniture. This tutorial assumes that you have imported and installed the Sinespace Editor Pack from the Asset Store in Unity. Just import it and you'll know that it's complete when you have these folders. This tutorial also assumes that you've installed the Editor Pack settings after you've imported the Sinespace Editor Pack, and this will install lighting and graphics, and it will allow you to create a correct new Sinespace scene that has in it the export settings already for you to fill in, and it has a light, which we'll call the sun, and a landmark. The landmark is necessary for you when you arrive in world or when you test your scene with the play mode in the editor. Now there's one more thing you'll need to do before we actually begin building our furniture. You'll need the furniture sample assets, the Unity package, as seen here on our wiki. There's a download link in the description below this video, and in there will be all the models and the assets you need to follow this tutorial. Go up to the top menu, to Assets, and scroll down till you get to Import Package, Custom Package, and click on that, and navigate to the Room Furniture Samples Unity package. Click on that, and then click Open, and up will come a list, not nearly as long as the Sinespace Editor Pack, but still there will be some objects in there. Go ahead and click Import. Shouldn't take long. and it will bring in a new folder of items for you to use as you follow along with this and a number of other tutorials. Inside this folder, you may see one or more other folders and the models that we're going to use. The folder that we're going to be interested in today is the Materials folder. In the Materials folder are materials and textures that you will need as we work on our objects today. The materials actually hold the textures, and I'll go through this with you in just a few moments. Now, on our cube, this is our floor, we have a landmark, and this allows us to see the furniture that we are making in play mode, which is what we get when we press this button, and our player character will enter the scene and we can look at our furniture. But I also like to know where it is because it is close to 0, 0, 0 position. And that becomes important when you start moving and rotating your objects inside the empties as child objects. And if you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. I'll explain all of that as we go. Now let's take an object and move it onto our floor. It's quite small, but you can see that it is now blue, and that means that the prefab is in the folder and the item is connected to that prefab. I'm going to press F as in Frank so that it moves me closer. And here I have a little round table. Now it's kind of dull and unexciting in this respect. And so let's look at our inspector. If you haven't really worked with objects in Unity before, you'll notice that it picks up the shadows and the shading from the lighting, but there really isn't any much more to it. That's because we need to do something with these different materials. And if you look, you may notice that here's a table mat 1, a table mat 2, a table mat 3, and those correspond with the materials in the materials folder. But before we actually do anything with textures, I just want to show you a little bit of something about the materials that you can do before you do anything with textures. So we'll just look at table mat 1. And all I'm going to do is go over here and click the red. Table mat 1 is a material that has been given to a certain number and a certain type and a certain layout of UV maps. And so wherever those are, it will allow you to place that tint or the texture that will go with it. You can change the different colors if you want to. You can make it quite exciting. You can make it lighter or darker. All sorts of variables with just a different color. We're going to make this color, kind of purple, because why not? You can also change quite a bit of the look of this item simply by moving the sliders around, the metallic slider, the smoothness slider, and by changing the metallic or albedo alpha. And I'll explain these two in just a moment. But if you move this slider, and let's go all the way to the other end, you can tell that the color is getting darker. That's because it's becoming more metallic. Now it doesn't really seem to be very much more metallic until we add the smoothness. And we have a light source on it. Let's see if we can get our light source on it. The smoother it gets, the shinier it gets. And you can really see that when the light shines on it. Let's try another one of our colors. Let's try table mat 2. And let's give this one, Let's make this one, oh, make it kind of a, let's make it a little brighter. There we go. Give it some color. This one also, you can make it more or less metallic. You can make it more smooth or less smooth. And the smoothness is really hard to tell when all you have on it is a color. Now let's try table 3, or I'm sorry, table mat 3. And we'll give it a color. Let's give it kind of a bright blue. And again, you can make that more metallic and more smooth. And here you can see how it's starting to really pick up those metallic tones. If you want it to be more plastic looking, then it's quite a bit less metallic. In fact, it's not very metallic at all. If you want it to look plastic but very, very smooth, as if it's just come out of the cast, then you can move it close to almost fully smooth. Now, it's advisable not to take it all the way to 1, because then you can start getting some actually quite funky looks when you get in world. But this just gives you an idea of what you can do, even if you haven't done anything with any textures. So now let's do a little bit with some textures. And if you look at the textures that come in the folder, you'll notice that you have images. And if you look at them in your inspector, you can see them a little bit better. Okay. This one is a tintable fiberglass. It seems perfect for our table. And I say that it's tintable. It's actually a cream-colored fiberglass texture. But the tintable means that you can add it to the table and keep the color that you have in the table. Let me show you. So let's say that our light blue down here at the bottom is actually going to be fiberglass. So we go down to table mat 3, and we click on the tintable fiberglass. Click on your object and then very quickly drag your tintable fiberglass to it. And because it's already a cream color, you can see that it changes the color of the table a bit. And if we remove this color completely, we get the cream color, very shiny. And if we add the color back, we get various shades of green. So the colors will interact. The other way to choose this particular image is by clicking on this small circle here. This is called the albedo slot. And you can see that I've got my tintable fiberglass image right here. Sometimes you'll need to search if you're looking for a particular name of an item. So those are 2 ways that you can add the texture. Now I want to click on one of these blue squares, and I'm going to click on the corresponding blue square called Tintable Fiberglass /N. This is what we call a normal map, and for those of you familiar with normal maps, this is going to be old hat to you. But if you're not familiar with normal maps, or what to do with them when you get them into Unity, you just click on the texture, and the inspector will show you the information about the texture itself. All you have to do for now is go up to texture type, click on normal map, some things will change, and then scroll all the way to the bottom, click on apply, and sometimes your normal map will change colors. That's actually useful if you're not quite sure that it actually took, so to speak. And then if you look down in the material, this is table mat 3 that we're in the material, we choose the area that says normal map. Again, you can do it one of 2 ways. Most people, once they get versed, will just slide that right in there. And you may or may have not have noticed how this texture changed. We're going to see if we can get up close to it here without doing too much. You can see that there's quite a bit of texture in there now. Lots of scratches and grooves. The nice thing about the Unity and the normal maps is this slider. It's kind of invisible, so you have to hover over it. But you can reduce those scratches quite a bit. In fact, you can almost to where you don't see them, but you do see them. And it depends on your object, and it depends on the purpose with which you're going to use them. But this is quite nice. You could really make it severe, or you can soften them as much as you want to. And then if you couple this with the metallic setting and the smooth setting, now that we've got so many scratches in it, is it smooth and scratched? Or is it just kind of a rough plastic? Fiberglass is kind of in the middle, so we're going to put this kind of in the middle because it will reflect a little bit. But it's not metallic. And for another dramatic change, you can just change to the albedo alpha, which will immediately put your smoothness all the way to 1. So now we're going to reduce this again, and you get a little bit even softer appearance. So maybe our plastic will look like so. And if you need to, you can copy these numbers from table mat 3 to table mat 2 and to table mat 1. Now I'm going to leave table mat 2 and table mat 1 untextured because let's say they're inlay. Okay, so maybe it's a little bit metallic and maybe this one is really quite glossy. And I'm going to use the albedo alpha there a little bit again. Okay. You will notice that more dramatically depending on where you put it in the world. But for now, you have an idea of the different things that you can do with your piece of furniture. Now what we need to do is to prepare our piece of furniture to upload it to our room or a region, which are basically the same thing. But your room, such as the free room that you have when you joined, this will have room floors in it already. And actually, Sinespace will add a room floor to the cube if you decide to upload this region using the scene export settings. And you can do that. You can add your table to your floor and fill out all of the information here and upload your table with the entire region. But what we're going to do is we're going to upload just the table. Now, there's one thing that I want to show you. Let's see. And I'm going to show you this. I'm in the preview server right now, which is what we use for testing. And just for your information, I have used one of the textures on the cube of the editor. You can see here it's smooth, but I have used one of the textures on the cube because I like to have a little bit of differentiation between the objects, and the cube is a little bit shiny. Now, I've uploaded this table. It's colored a little bit differently, but I've uploaded it to show you something. And I've uploaded it as a table. And what I'm going to do is I've uploaded as a spawnable object, and that means you can just set it out directly with the spawn button from your inventory. And oh dear, look, it is halfway into the ground. I'm going to try that again. Table spawn. It is indeed halfway into the ground. So if I go back to the editor and I look at my table, it's not halfway into the ground. It's standing up nice and straight, and it's sitting on the floor like it should be. Well, let me show you what is happening here. If we come over to the inspector and we look at the position, well, that's okay. We can put this at 0, 0, 0 if we want to, or we can leave it where it is. A lot of people use the position 0, 0, 0, but more importantly than the position is actually these next two items. Actually, the rotation is really the important part, because here we have rotation at 90, but we have the blue arrow pointing forward, and we have all of the arrows halfway up the table and halfway through the center column. So what's going to happen is this table is going to lay down towards the blue side, and it's going to bury itself halfway into the floor because we are rotated at 90 degrees. And we can't unrotate this, because if we do, let's say we put it at 0, well, now we are halfway into the floor. So when we spawn something and when we first pull something out and place it on our floor, it is rotated at 0, 0, 0. This might be okay for you, and you're happy to rotate your object in your own room. But if you're trying to make things to sell on the marketplace, they'll need to pass review, and they won't pass review if they are buried halfway into the floor when someone pulls them out into their room floor. So here's how we fix that. First thing I'm going to do is to click on the item in the hierarchy, and I am going to come down here to Game Object, and I'm going to break the prefab instance. Now, if you're not familiar with prefabs, prefabs are basically this. One item, this one right here, controls every round side table that is used from it in the scene. That means that this is the prefab. Well, what we need to do is to create a new prefab. So we're going to go to Game Object and break prefab. Then I'm going to rename this one. I'm going to name this one as my round table, because then I know it is a different table from the original prefab. Now, because it's rotated at 90 degrees, I need something that I can use so that it will stand straight up. Before I do that, however, there's one thing I'm going to add. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to start this way. I right-click or control-click on the item, and I create an empty. And I name that my round table, and I like to put an E in parentheses, because then I know which one is the empty and which one is the table. Now, if you notice, this empty is here at the bottom of the table, and that's good as far as placement because it's not halfway up the column, but it's still a child object of the table, and what we actually need is we need to make this empty the parent object. So let's click on it and drag it up, what I call out of the object itself. So now my round table object is still in the same situation it was in, but my round table empty is a little bit different. I want to show you something one more time. Look at these numbers here in the transform component. I'm going to pull my round table empty back in, and look, no rotation, no position, scale at 1. We need that to show, at least in the rotation and scale, when it's the parent object. Because here, if you rotate the empty at 90 degrees, you're going to have the same problem as you had with your table rotating at 90 degrees. So up here in the empty, we're going to, this is going to be 0. And then for good measure, our scale is going to be 1, 1, and 1. Now this won't make much difference for our round table, It's not going to change the size of our round table. But should you ever decide in this empty to add another object like a sphere or a cube directly from the 3D object menu, this scale will become extremely important, and you can test that for yourself. Leave it at the 1/15 scale that the round table is in, and just add a cube or a circle to it and see what happens sometime. But for now, I'm going to move on. I'm going to now click on my round table. Actually, let's check the position of the empty. One of the important things is that this empty is on the floor or even slightly below, slightly above it. I should have moved that back up, yeah. Because then this is exactly where the component that we'll add is going to add this object to the floor. It doesn't matter where the origin is or where the pivot point is in the object itself. What matters is where the empty is, where the exact center of the empty is. And that's why I create it from the object, because then it's in the center. So now I click and drag my object into the empty. My object is still rotated at 90 degrees and it is still scaled at 115. But now it is in an empty that is at 0 rotation and 0 scale. I don't worry too much about the position, because the position in world is wherever your mouse is once you've clicked on the item in your inventory and you're setting it out on your floor. That position will change, and it'll change as you move it. It'll change it as you pull it up and down and place it side to side. Okay, now what I need to do is to add a couple of components to my table so that I can actually upload my table. One of the first things that I need is a virtual good component. And I'm going to do this a little bit backwards to show you how these components will help you, making sure that you have what you need. Now, this virtual good component is, by the way, the same as the virtual good component in the scene export settings. The only difference in the scene export settings, or uploading the entire room, is that you have an extra part of the component down here where it talks about what you actually want to do with the scene, and that's where you upload it. With a virtual good, however, or a piece of furniture, you only have the one component, that is the virtual good. So our type, for our purposes, since you've seen how it would spawn, this one, I am going to make it a piece of furniture. And I'm going to choose the same furniture category as category table. And the name is My Round Table. And the description, beautiful round table. Okay. Brand, my brand. And this, of course, will be whatever your brand name is. Now, before we move to the next tab, you'll notice that it says upload type is set to furniture. However, no room furniture component could be found. So it looks like we need to add a furniture component. So if we start to type, we see a room furniture component. So let's add that. Okay. So here we have room of furniture. We're going to place it on the floor. That's good. If you had a painting, you would place it on the walls. And the blue arrow would be facing away from the walls. So that's the direction in which you want to face. Same with the ceiling. Collider, only enable collider. Oh, it looks like there's no collider. And if we click on the table and we look at the components, there is no collider component. So we can do this one of two ways. We can add our collider, and we can just add a box collider to it if we want to, or you can add a box collider or a mesh collider. But for right now, we're just going to add a box collider. And did I actually add that? Oh, I added 2 of them. Let's see where it is now. So I only need the 1. Now, a box collider on a round object is a little bit awkward, but for our purposes, we're just going to let it stay where it is because it does give us a surface. And if you added a mesh collider, it would just take the shape of the whole object. But I want you to see this collider. You can move it up and down by grabbing the handles. And you can move the surface either smaller or larger. Or if you had another object like a cup on the table, you could actually just use the mesh collider on the cup and on the table. And oftentimes this is enough for you to use for your room component collider. But I'm going to put this back up here now in case I should want to set something on it, or so that I won't walk through it. And then I unclick Edit, and it allows you to see where your collider is, which is good. So let's go back to our empty. This is our parent object. And in this empty, we have our room furniture script. We still need this collider, but now we know that we have one on the table. You can put your collider on the empty. You can put your collider on the table. If you have a group of objects, you can use one of the colliders on the any of the objects, or create one on the empty that will place all of the objects at once. For our purposes, let me get back to that. Again, you can either click the dot, and here's my round table. It wouldn't show up if it didn't have a collider. So we can do it this way, or you can grab it and drag it into the slot. And for right now, that's all we need to do for our room component. There will be other things that we can do later on. Now our details, we don't worry too much about. We haven't got a movie of our table, so we're not going to worry about that. We are going to say that it's not for sale. If you want to sell it, you will need to take a picture of the beautiful table in World. And wherever there's a red warning sign, it's probably something missing. So my name, that's going to be your name, of course. And then again, your brand, or if your brand is part of a larger brand, you can add that in there. Okay, so we have our table itself, and we have it textured and colored the way we like it. We have our collider on it, and if you collapse this window, it disappears. If you expand it, you can see it. And it just depends on your personal preferences. We have our empty so that our table stands upright, and we have our room furniture script. I tend to collapse them or close them once they are finished. And we have all of the things entered into our virtual goods script. If it's a yellow warning, normally when you're testing this, you can ignore that. So the selected virtual good is not a prefab. Drag this object from the hierarchy panel. So all that work that we did to break the prefab now comes into play. My round table as the empty, I click and I drag it here. You could also click the Fix Now button, and that will actually also make it a prefab. And if you look down here in the project folder, you'll see that the original is on its side. If you can see this closely enough, I can't make these any bigger, I'm sorry. And then my round table has all sorts of things in the inspector, and it's upright. So I feel pretty confidently that we can upload it. Now, if there's anything that you've missed, you'll usually get a warning sign here. So we're going to see. Okay. Up there we go. Now our table is going up first to the curator. And this kind of happens pretty quickly. Here's my round table. It gives it an item number, and it is processing. And that takes a little while to do. And so while it does that, I want to do just a couple more things. I'm going to go back into materials, and let's say we've decided to put another material on my round table. I'm going to open it up and get to the table mat. And let's say that in table mat 2, I decide that I want to do my table. I don't just want to tint it, although maybe I'll tint it a little bit, maybe just a little bit in a moment. I'm going to put that up there so that it's as white as possible. But let's say I want this to be fine wood. Okay, I want this one to be fine wood, so I'm going to drag my texture, my albedo texture in, and you can see how that changes. And let's say wood is kind of smooth, but not really smooth. And let's say wood is not really metallic. So I turn down the metallic quite a bit. And that's looking pretty nice there. So I say, okay, so I'm going to do the same with my normal map, and I drag my normal map in. Now I get something very unusual, and it says this texture is not marked as a normal map. Fix now. Okay, let's fix that. And now it is a normal map. So once again, Unity helps you. You can see now that there is wood grain texture. So Unity will often tell you if you need to do something or not. And in this case, I think I am not actually going to give it another color because it's kind of interesting the way that it's turning out. And maybe what I'd like to do is now to change the color here. Maybe I'm going to lighten that a little bit. Move that up, lighten this, or try to see if I can find a color that looks a little bit better with that wood. Maybe that, and maybe lighten it. You can do just about anything you want to with it. But that's just something you can do while we're waiting for our table to upload and to process. And let's just see if, yep, okay, our table is, when it says staging, that means it's ready to test. And what you might need to do, let's see, click on table. I still only have one, so I'm going to click the refresh button, and I should get another, and I do. So my round table, you can see there is no spawn button like there is if I click my table. There's a spawn button because that's a spawnable. If I click my round table, that one needs the room editor button. So I am going to walk over here just a little bit. Click my room editor button, find my table, and let's see. And there it is. Upright and colorful and all ready to set next to my sofa or next to a chair or wherever I want to place it. Now you can also make this one spawnable very easily. Instead of type furniture, you just choose type generic, drag this again. I would rename it my round table spawnable. Drag it again into the folder so that you get a second, actually a third prefab, and then clear your ID, rename it in your details, and you'll have yourself a nice spawnable table. So there you go. You're all set. Give it a try yourself. Enjoy building, and we'll see you again.